We're going to talk about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I know it was like a couple of weeks ago they leaked audio. It was like a full 1 hour one, and there was also an additional 4 minute one. And I kind of want to go over like how to fight in a productive way. I know like fight, it's a very polarizing word. It's a very negatively conceptualized word, but it is important that you need to know how to disagree and like fight, but in a productive way. So throughout the audio, Amber Heard, she starts it off by saying, every time we fight, you split, like you split, you leave, and he's like, and he said that he splits and leaves because he's trying to avoid a confrontation. Um, Throughout the audio, it's mentioned that she's thrown things. She's thrown like pots and pans. She's even hit him. She's hit him with a closed hand, like a fist, and and she's like, oh, I don't know which way the direction of my hand went but I did not punch you, and he's like, that was a punch. He's like, you don't get to decide if I'm like how I'm feeling about you violating my body, like, and that brings me to another like whole other thing, like, men can be abused too. I think that's the saddest thing. It's a lot of mention of her like physically hitting him, and then if you hear her, like, she'll just randomly just start escalating out of nowhere. It's like you can't tell. So I think what really happened is that if they would, like, I'm sure he really loved her, but I think it, like, when he was around her, it felt like he was walking on eggshells. And that's, you don't want to create that with your partner. In the first 15 minutes, she says me. So she literally says the word me so much. I counted, she only said the word we, like W-E, like twice when they were fighting. And another scary thing is that she appears to be drugging him and herself. She gives him a Xanax during some of the fight. I think it's like the last third of the fight, she gave him a Xanax. And she mentioned to him how she took an Ambien so she could go to sleep, that when he got back home from her neighbors, that way they wouldn't fight. In the first 5 minutes of the video, she says how she doesn't feel like she feels secure, she feels like there's no trust, and that, when they fight, he just splits. And I just feel like there was a different way for her to get her message across without coming off very strongly and emotional, because Johnny, like, when you hear him in the audio, he doesn't talk a lot. He's letting her speak her mind and stuff, which is good. But he also mentioned, like, hey, just ask me nicely. They're fighting, it kind of goes in a circle. That's the other thing about unproductive fighting, is that when you're fighting and it just goes in a circle. To fight more productively, obviously, don't just start randomly escalating like she does. Like, she'll like be like talking like regular level, and then she'll like get really like scary, screamy. Second, don't throw things at your partner. That should be obvious. Third, do not hit or harm your partner. That was a real concern for me, because apparently they were told to actually voice record their arguments by a therapist, and I cannot find the name of this therapist. Therapists, they're licensed and trained that, if they hear that, if they have a client, like a couple as a client, and like they're hurting each other, they're supposed to report that to the authorities. Like, that could be like life-threatening. I mean, look, I don't care that Amber Heard is like a tiny thing. It's all about, it's intent. Like, she wanted to harm him, and she wanted to be like in command of their relationship. Oh, another thing that I noticed is that she has a lot of needs. A lot of people are saying she's a narcissist. I don't know if that's entirely true. When you listen to her, she sounds like she has a lot of needs. And Johnny, he says, I just want peace. And I thought that was just so sad because this is a guy who's obviously, he was in his late 40s at the time that they got married. She was like 26 when they got married. Like she's really young. She uses a lot of emotional language. She's like, oh, like the way she used relish, like, I can leave and you can just relish. Like, who talks like that, honestly? But another really alarming thing is, like, when you get married, like, what are you really getting married for? Like, you really have to think twice about that, because these are two obviously, independent people. They have their own ways of going about life. They have their own money. And they talked about how they wanted to get married as a foundation for security and safety. And he wanted her to be his wife. And I thought that was really sad because, obviously he's an older guy, I think he wants to be, he had gotten out of a relationship, like a 14-year relationship with Vanessa Paradis to be with Amber Heard. And Amber Heard had also left a 4-year relationship to be with him. So, yeah, that was obviously a really sketchy situation. Another thing that really showed me that she really wants to be in control of their relationship was at timestamp 2419. She says, I've always allowed you to blah, 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 allowed. And she said this word twice around that time. And I'm like, allowed? Like, that's kind of controlling. When you want to, disagree productively with your partner, you can't do it in a naggy way. I think she really needed to just take a step back from herself and be like, hey, I want to spend more time with you. And I think she needs to learn to speak to guys, men, in like a way that they can understand more. Because women, we score higher on neuroticism than men. And Johnny, he doesn't really, he talks a whole lot. He's an older guy. He's like more, he's more at peace with himself. And, she's young and she talks a lot. Like, she's like really assertive in their conversation. One really big scary thing that I didn't like in their conversation was at about timestamp 31 minutes in, like halfway through, she says, you're only my husband in the ups. And I felt like she was guilting him like that. Like, I feel like she has some serious control issues. Like, I feel like she thought when she married him she was going to have him all to herself. And, like, you don't get married for those reasons. You don't, like, I don't think it's healthy to get married for security. And also, if you have to get married for security, I think that shows that you have the most insecurity in your relationship. Like, why are you fighting so hard for security in your relationship? If you had security in your relationship, you would have never had to discuss it and be like, hey, I want more security in our relationship. All in all, I think she was really young when they got married. She did a lot of dating, but I think she was in one cohabitative relationship with like a girlfriend, but that's it. She really needs to improve her fighting style. Like, when you hear their conversation, it just sounds like they're talking in circles, like they're talking about like how they're fighting, and then that just leads to more fighting, and it's like, that's not really productive when you're talking in circles. You really need to expose the root of the problem or figure out the root of the problem together. I don't know if maybe they were talking in circles because they both knew they were being recorded. Like, it is mentioned at the very end. He's like, listen to the tapes, review the tapes of our previous arguments. And she just kind of scoffs at that. The thing about relationships is sometimes I think people are so worried about what they're getting that they're not giving. And I feel like they really stress their ego and their needs. And I feel like when you're in a relationship, you really have to give up your ego and your individual needs to keep the peace. And, What's sad about this fight between her and Johnny, if it was something real to fight about, like she was upset that he leaves when they fight, and that she doesn't feel like he's fighting for their relationship, like she doesn't feel like he's making an effort. They're not fighting about like most normal people. We fight about like you know, you wake up in the morning and like you see like your boyfriend's boxers outside of a laundry basket by 6 inches, and it just drives you crazy. I think with her, they have such a different. They're both celebrities. They're both very wealthy. They have such different problems than the rest of us, and I think Amber Heard really needs to work on the way she argues. I mean, that's not obvious enough. She needs to stop like randomly escalating her voice in the middle of a conversation. I think she needs to tone down the emotional language. She's just, you know, she's just throwing her words at this guy all the time, and I think it's a lot for a guy to take in. And he's tired too. They're both tired. Don't drug your partner. Whatever you do, do not drug your partner. Even if it's a prescription. Because, yeah, even if it's a prescription, don't drug your partner. I just can't stress that enough. That's just so wrong. Yeah, he just married the wrong one. I think what happened was that, you know, I think what happened with Johnny, like, I know this is kind of random, but, like, you know, they were on this movie. She's obviously young. I think, you know, she made him feel like a young guy again. I think she made him feel stimulated. Because she's obviously, you know, really intelligent person. But also a really insecure person. And, you know, she's young. I don't think they ever would have worked out for each other, to be really honest. Oh, and don't guilt your partner when you're arguing. That's like toxic red flag of arguing. Final summation. Fighting style. If you fight with your partner, do not talk in circles. Be very productive. Stay calm. Don't throw pots and pans. Don't hit or punch your partner. Don't call them names. She does call him a baby. And definitely don't guilt your partner, especially at the part where she's like, oh, you're only my husband in the ups. Don't guilt your partner. That's messed up. Don't drug your partner, and don't drug yourself. Like, this was a really combustible situation. I think maybe she needs to get some kind of treatment. There's clearly, she needs to get some kind of treatment for her mentality. She seems really insecure. And also she needs to come up with coping skills on how to fight more productively, more safely, more calmly. Anyways, guys, we'll chat again soon, and take care.